Hello, everyone. Good morning, good late morning, good afternoon, good evening to those of you that are in other parts of the world. We're so happy to be back with you at this point in our day. We are now beginning our fourth presentation for today, and we're excited to be here. I'm Christine Brown. I have my partner here, Kathy Murabit. We have been working on the AERO World Language Project now for a very long time together. Working with the Office of Overseas Schools in my role as Regional Education Officer, Kathy as a former elementary principal and foreign language teacher for her career in Rabat and in other spots around the world. Today we've shared quite a few things about the history of the project, about the standards and benchmarks that it's built upon, about the new tools that we have for you to use. And if you're new, just signing on to this particular webinar for middle school, we would love for you to go back and listen to recordings 1 and 2 specifically about why we're doing the project that we're doing, how it's organized around essential questions and inquiry, how it relates both to the Common European Framework and the ACFL guidelines, how the AERO standards are built upon the US standards. And also you will understand the design model for our curriculum units using understanding by design and essential questions that guide the grade levels. And you'll hear more about that from our excellent presenters today. So it's my honor to turn this over to Martina Saluso, who is our middle school lead. We have on the call Hanadi Daye, Mohammed El Babli, and Lori Langer de Ramirez, who is in the US, and everyone else is international. So they will be sharing their work with you right now. We recorded this because we have some Wi-Fi issues around the world, but we will be here in a live chat with you the entire time and then back on in a live question and answer at the end. So Martina, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Christy. So I would like to greet all the participants, and I would like to present the middle school team. Lori Ramirez, Hanadi Dayek, and Mohammed. Mohammed is joining us from Egypt, from Cairo, Lori from New York, and Hanadi from Lebanon, and I'm in Zagreb, Croatia. And as you have heard in the morning sessions, we are all part of the World Language Tier 2 Curriculum Writing Task Force. And in this presentation, we will focus on the middle school units. We will present the whole process of writing the unit. I will start by presenting the whole unit plan. And this part of the presentation will be first recorded. And then at the end, we're going to be able to answer during some questions live. Okay, so I will actually start the recording unless Hanadi, Lori, and Mohammed would like to say something. Okay.
Hey Martina, we aren't able to hear it. Are you able to share with your sound?
Okay, I'm having problem with internet right now. Please give me a second.
Martina, I will try share it from my end.
Can you please?
Textbooks published in the US or information from ACTFL, you're going to see come up in about a week. If you do use Atlas, you'll be able to grades, 3 examples of units, each of them being from a different grade level. But while talking about our units, we're also going to focus on different aspects of the unit. Next slide, please. Yes, next slide, please. So in the middle school grades, we have, just like in the entire curriculum, we have a grade level question, an overarching inquiry for the whole school year, and we have 5 units, 5 essential questions which are framing the 5 units. As Christy mentioned before, those questions are initially based on the questions raised by our students, as well as on the content and connections to the curriculum in the other areas of the grade level. So the grade level questions in grade 6 is what shapes our identity. Grade 7, how do travel, movement, and transitions change our lives? And in grade 8 is how do we contribute to our community? I will focus in my unit and my presentation on grade 6, on the identity. And next slide, please. And my unit is going to be the unit 3 in our modern language curriculum, which is how do my possessions show my identity? Or rephrased in a language that is more friendly to our students, how do things that we have show who we are? Next slide, please. I decided to talk about this unit. Normally it is a unit we teach as number 3, but this year, due to the specific situations related to COVID, our lockdown started, and I decided to teach this unit a little bit earlier in the year because it was a perfect unit to teach at the time when students are at home, because it is focusing about things around their house, but it also gives them some connections to the normal times, to things they used to do and things they used to collect and have before the COVID strikeouts that we were in the lockdown. It also gave them a possibility to make some social and emotional connections to some members of the families through the things that they share and through the souvenirs. And it also allowed for the expansion of vocabulary in the different areas of their interests. So it was a unit that has a lot of opportunities to kind of specialize to the interests and individuality of each of the particular students. Just like in all the other units, we were focusing on this cultural comparison between the target language cultures and cultures of the students and the host country. So I will now start with by showing you the sample of the entire unit plan, while I will also focus on my unit through specific sections of the unit plan. So every unit plan starts with a unit summary. In my case, in this unit, student will explore objects and things people have and value. And through those objects and possessions, they will learn about passions people have, how those passions may be different in different cultures, and how things about which we are passionate form part of our identity. Also, by socializing, and this socializing aspect became important, we often talk about passions from very simple to quite a profound and detailed level. And talking about passions and possessions, they could be part of a small talk or a profound relationship we can form on common interest. So after this unit summary, standards and benchmarks, I'm not going to elaborate because this is my colleagues will tell you more about it, but I still want to mention that in each unit we have all the 5 C's of the standards are mentioned, but the different benchmarks under the standards, there are differently stressed in different units. We also make sure that within the grade level, all the benchmarks for the grade level are covered. The next part of our unit plan, okay,
is enduring understanding. And then we have also a section for additional essential questions. These are those that could or don't have to be covered. And we give just some options in which people could go within the units. Among the questions listed here, I will stress those like, how do people in different cultures keep their memories? Do they have memory boxes, or they keep the memory boxes? Do they pass them on from generation to generation? Or how do specific items become souvenirs and memories? What makes it different from just an item in your house? We also focused on the ways how countries keep and collect their memories. So we talked a little bit about museums, about national collections and national museums. Again, how are things kept in different museums. We also talked about the way the different generations keep and collect their stuff, some unusual connections people have related around stuff. We also talked about the values of collections, auctions for some specialized collector items. So there are some other essential questions that could be tackled as part of the unit. Next, please. The next part of our unit plan is the assessment part. So it's of course very important that we have a backwards design in mind. So each unit has a summative, one or two summative assessments, as well as several formative assessments, which in some cases, because my units are usually done collaboratively, and sometimes my colleagues use examples that I used for formative assessments, they use them just as class activities. But in my case, the summative assessment was real life situations. You are hosting a party at your home for a small group of friends and exchange students from the target language culture. You're walking them through the parts of your house where you keep your collections or some valuable items, and you are presenting your collections. And here I gave some examples. It could be stamps, rocks, coins, etc., paintings on the wall, souvenirs from travel. And then you speak about the reason for which you value those collections. So this is the summative assessment, which was done as a video. But also for a short sequence, we had some options of presenting only specific items. Some of the formative assessments that were also mentioned here, interview with an elderly person about how they keep their memories. Then presenting a collection in your family, which doesn't have to be yours, but from somebody else that you know, or describing a picture and hypothesizing about the passions of a person based on the things that he has around them. And then an email. So we also talked a little bit about formality, and then email that you're searching for a specific object for a collection, and you're debating about the value and asking for the cost. So we included economy in it as well. Yes. So the next, so again, here the section is of a connection to the other disciplines. Here you really, because of depending on the choices of students, we could go in many different directions. And I will show you with examples of the students' work, how we elaborated some of those connections. I would here also stress these math economics connections about cost of rare items, value of connections, as well as connections to science, history, music, art, geography. The next section of the unit is this language needed to meet the benchmarks. This is something that was really important for us as language teachers. So here we have three parts of the unit plan. So we have parts with function and purpose, what students should be able to do, what are the contexts and how they need to communicate in different contexts, with lists of situations under functions and purpose. Then we have a section which we call structures and unique features. We didn't want to call it grammar. In some cases, it is grammatical parts, but in some cases, it's also some of the phonetic specificities or specificities of the word order. In this case, talking about the French, so I initially co-wrote this unit for French. We focused on the use of descriptive adjectives. Sometimes it was a revision or extension of what students knew from before. On comparison, we talked about asking questions in three different ways. French has three different ways in which questions could be asked, depending on the level of formality. We also focused on the place of the pronouns for the complément objet direct, place of object pronouns. And I will show you an example of the student's work exactly what it means. We also focused on the text types, how the same information could be actually done through the interview or through an article or an email. So we focused on the different types of text used within the same context and a little bit about the register. The third part is vocabulary, and vocabulary in the lower levels, we are focusing on spelling out as many vocabulary items and structures that we can. The higher the grade, the more difficult it is to spell out all the vocabulary. So we just give examples of some of the vocabulary that we're using. So yes, next slide, please. The next part of the unit plan is this elements of effective learning plan. Again, here in each unit, you have a description how unit was taught, from the initiation to the assessment, to the pre-assessment and prior knowledge, to the development, and to the preparation for the summative and formative assessment. My colleagues will elaborate on the elements of the learning plan. So I will continue with the next element of the unit plan, which is the part about the differentiation. Here in some units, we have also examples of how units could be modified for the shorter sequence. The next part is resources. We tried to include for the languages that we taught as many authentic resources as we can. Here I put links to the authentic sites from which we were learning about different collections, different values of the items. Also, in case we used sections of some textbooks, we referred to those textbooks and publishers from which those were used, as well as to some methodological articles. In this case, I put here an article from Ethiopia about how to use when an object becomes an artifact for culture. So it's a different, good background article about how to talk in general about stuff. The teacher reflection usually says who are the people who authored or co-authored the units. In this case, this was me with my colleague Muhammad. The following few slides are just examples from my classroom. So this is when my students are presenting items from the room. We started with simple things, what are valuable to them. Then we did research. The next is research about some of the collections. On the next slide. So this was the research they had to do, and they were very engaged. They were finding some really weird collections, but it also led to some very productive conversation. Out of the pictures I selected, for example, about some of them didn't see a vinyl record before or a cassette, so we brought some examples. We also made a connection with the host country culture, and when we talked about fountain pens, this was an example of a fountain pen collection, Croatia being the home of Slavoljub Penkala, here to how writing and handwriting and calligraphy could be different to different cultures. Talking about stamps and stamp collections, we also kind of branched into talking about stamps, French stamps from the Dôme Département de Outre-mer. We talked about currency, French francs, value of the stamp. We talked about symbols that are found on the stamps, like Marianne for France, some historical stamps. So those research of collections led to really connections to history, geography. And the interesting one here on the right side was a collection about chemical elements, which one student was really passionate about chemistry and science. And even though students never heard yet about the periodic system of elements, they had not learned it in science yet, he insisted on presenting that collection. Then we went to science teacher and kind of reorganized their science curriculum so that this could be learned earlier in their science curriculum, since now they had some initial background information about science. The next example are example of some memory boxes that they were sharing, talking and interviewing their grandparents about a prize that the grandma won for the teacher of the year, from a boy who didn't even know his grandma was a teacher because she died before she was alive, but she stopped teaching. So he was very enthusiastic to think about his grandma teacher. Then we have some examples from the classroom also. The next slide are example of how they had to interview an elderly person. So they had to first write questions in form of an interview, and then they had to rewrite the same collections about this special object of my grandma in form of a short information article. So here we worked on the text types, and we worked on the difference, the register a little bit how you would say the same thing. Here I put some examples of how I correct some of their work, because I have higher and lower. I mean, all my students, I'm teaching students who have had 4, 5, or 6, or 7 years of training. Students, yet some of them look, in Google Translator, and we have some issues when I give them work to work in Google Drive. So here I showed, they talked about collection of cameras at home, how I do correct. Just an example.
Sorry, Martina, we're actually sharing your screen and it's not
here
working.
Is the girl. Joe, I was right. I have. Do you want me to continue live?
Sorry, yes, Martina, sorry. It's
okay, that's okay. I'm just going to continue live.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on, sorry. So yes, we were afraid that we are going to have a problem with recording, but I'll continue live. So basically, what I was showing in the video, I was showing some examples of the student work. I'll go a little bit back. So again, in the unit from objects in my room to interesting collections that students were researching, I was mentioning the collection of pens, and we were talking about handwriting and fountain pens, being in Croatia, the home of pen and Slava Ljuba and Kala. In relation to the stamps, we also had lots of historical points that we're mentioning, from the French symbols of Marianne to some interesting stamp collections for different départements d'outre-mer. An interesting research was also from a student who was really passionate about chemistry. So she found a collection about chemical elements. And at the time, students were not yet learning about chemical elements, but we really made a very clear connection to science because of the collection that he researched. Here are some other examples from classroom. Students talking about their grandparents, being teachers, special moments and special memories of grandparents. Here we worked on the text types, as I said, from interview to article, how students interviewed parents about the special objects and worked on the text type. Examples of how I corrected the text in the Google Drive. So students work in the Google Drive, then they have to redo their assignments, sometimes handwritten, sometimes again retyped. Here was an example of a blog about books that a person received for Christmas, a collection about music boxes where they had to really focus on the complément d'objet direct and their position in French. And some of them summative assessments were about their family collections. Here we have assessments from album collections, Swarovski crystals, medals, students spoke about that. And they had to present it in form of videos, and videos are available in the Flipgrid. So again, this is example, this unit was example for grade 6. The theme, the overarching grade level questions was what forms my identity. Focus was objects we keep around the house, collections and things which we collect. It was done during the time we were in confinement. So basically kids enjoyed sharing things they had in their house. And after that, we returned to school and we finished the unit with a museum, with a visit to the museum, because one of the essential questions was also how do countries keep their collections? What is important for a country? So we went to the museum and we looked at the collection of the comic books, because some of the students expressed real interest in the comic books and share some of their special comic books. So this was an example of sample unit from grade 6. I will now pass the floor to my colleague Lori, who is focusing on one of the grade 7 units.
Okay, thank you, Martina.
That's Mohammed.
Oh, sorry, Mohammed. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Martina. And you will see Lori in a few minutes when she talks about grade 8. Martina, you are running the slides, yes?
Yes, I will run the slides.
The unit in grade 7 I'm focusing on here is, first of all, I'm Mohammed El-Babli from Cairo, Cairo American College. And the unit for grade 7 is how does travel influence our identity and perspective? This is the unit 3 in grade 7. And the grade 7 theme or question is about travel movement transitions, how this change our lives. So we have for grade 7, we have units all around movement, around transitions and travel. And we have, we'll focus today on this unit about the identity and perspective and how this get affected by traveling, moving, and seeing the world from different point of views. The grade level question again, and here's the unit question. And as you heard before, we have every grade level has a question, it's a grade level question, and every unit has overarching question. Now I will go to the unit summary. And the unit summary, as we know, this year students don't travel much and they don't move a lot. So we focus more on knowledge and how knowledge can shapes one's identity and perspective. As students learn about how understanding can open one's mind to embrace differences and appreciate diversity. And of course, it happened through the multiple experiences that the person learn about the others when they get to travel and see the world from different point of view. In this unit, students learn about other cultures. They try to gain the citizenship to be the citizen of the world and try to develop the open-mindedness and how to be inclusive and appreciate diversity. So this is the unit summary for unit 4. We start with the essential questions. And as you can see, the essential question focus more, it leads the unit into the direction we try to reach. For example, we try to appreciate diversity. So the first question, as you see here, what if we all took the same road? Another question like about how the location, the climate take parts in shaping the culture. How knowledge enhance intercultural competence, how being local is part of being global. And we go through the whole question. Of course, you can see this on the atlas, where is all documented. So those are the essential questions for the unit. We teach this unit in alignment with all the organization we work with. You can see here the IB statement, the CAC, the Cairo American College I work at, internationalism statement. We have here the AP, language and culture, and we have the intercultural development and continuum, where it goes through the different stages from denial up to adaptation. So those are very close to the themes we work with. Thank you, Martina. Next, please. For the unit summative is, we have the summative assessment. Here, it's the Citizen of the World passport, and this is the main project we have for the unit. Students are trying to create over the unit, try to create this citizenship to be the world citizen, and they have passports, and they go around the world with this passport, just trying to show understanding, trying to show awareness of different cultures in the world. And we will go to more details in a few seconds. So the Intercultural Competence Survey, we started with this survey. It's just like a pre-assessment. When we have the Intercultural Survey, we have few questions, like you can see here some questions, actually like what the students feel more curious to know about other cultures. We see the beliefs, the traditions, food, language, and celebrations. And we see most of the students actually, that choice was food, about 43%. I want to see like how many chose language. It's the green one. It's the minimum choices were language. I think that shows motivation for students. It's more for culture. I don't say we don't teach language, but we teach language through the culture. Culture is the goal. Language is the mean we try to use. So also other questions here, like we see a lot of agreement, disagreement on some subjects. I advocate for the culture. Some students also took different perspective. I am proud of my own culture and language. And all of this survey, the link is also on the atlas. So we start with this survey just to see what students think and have in common. For the knowledge, we students were gaining a lot of knowledge about the world. We don't focus on the knowledge if it's not related to the culture. For example, the location is all linked to the culture. The climate, how the climate influences the clothes, the attitude, the behavior, the demography of the country or the culture, the history, and we also like focus all of this on the culture components in every country we work on. The cultural groups, languages or language, food, celebrations, art, clothing, and cultural diffusion. And all of those points students were investigating, were searching, we try to gain more knowledge about them from different countries around the world. Of course, this happened with maps because we focus on the location and also from some videos, documentaries. So students created the Google slides, presentations. They worked on different cultures. Everyone was trying to learn more and more about that culture because they want to get ready for the presentation when will they share knowledge and when they will interview people to give them the stamps just to admit them into the country or into the culture. That's sample of the students' work they did in the class. Actually, one of the activities was to fill your immigration cards. And of course, you see here, one of the students did this. It's the name, the country you come from, where you were born, the birthday, actually, he had the weight and the height, job, and his nickname. It focused all about like no bank statement, no, nothing like this. It's just about who you are as a human. So students collect the over the unit, they collect pictures, they collect writing, they collect moments, even ads, and they add to their travel journal and or album. And we, by the end, we have reached the final summative assessment when they interview people from the community to let them in the culture if they show the awareness of this culture. And this is the passport they will use. It says insan, which is human in the language. It's just a human. You're just coming here because you are a human who understands the culture. And on the back of the passport, it says the holder of this passport is proud of their cultures, adapts to the world, seeks to strengthen humanity, and spread peace in the world, in this world. This was the Intercultural Competence project, the Summative Assessment. We used to have this unit in collaboration with the language art teacher, the social studies teachers and the world language teachers, Spanish and French and CSE. We used to have big day, food, dance, music, dressing up. All of this was like one of the very unique days when everyone be proud of the background they come from. But of course, for the year situation, we will do this in a different way. We will do it with more distance, social distance, and more with not food and not sharing all of this. It will be more about showing awareness or showing understanding for the culture. So for the standards and benchmarks, we, as all the units, we try over the year, we target the 5 standards. And here, of course, we target communication and connection and comparison a lot, but the main focus was culture. Through the language, we learn a lot about that, the different cultures. And we, the standards 2.1 and 2.2 are all surrounding in this. It's either students use the language to investigate, explain, and reflect on the practice and the perspectives of the cultures studied and the relationship between them. And the 2.2 is students use the language to investigate, explain, and reflect on the products and perspective of the culture studied and the relationship between them. Actually, for the AERO standards, we added 2.2. It's more about how to, the intercultural competence and how to be like cultural justice and understanding and appreciation for everyone. So we have elements of effective learning. This was the the planning. It's also documented on the atlas when we planned those units. And actually, one more thing I want to say about the planning is it happened with collaboration between all of us. Many people still teach, so they listen to the students' feedback, they collect exit tickets, they hear. So we have a lot of collaboration and help and working together on those units. So when you find this on Atlas, this unit, for example, I taught it in Arabic because I'm an Arabic teacher, but of course you can teach the same subject in any language, in any country, any culture. Thank you for listening, and now we will meet Lori from New York.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here with you today. Mohammed, just one quick follow-up question that's come through in the chat. You did mention it, but I want to just have you maybe address it directly. Folks are asking if you could tell them which language you use for instruction for your unit. So what language are you speaking when you kind of work on this unit with students?
Actually, if I can share one of the presentations, it's when you teach the students the visual clue and the limit or the amount of new vocabulary you get students exposed to, it helps you to use the target language when you teach them about the target culture. For example, I will use I think it was Einstein who said that if it shows understanding, if you can explain the same theme to a 6-year-old. So if you can explain or talk about the same theme for people in simple language that meet their language skills or language level, I think if you understand this really well, you can simplify the language to reach the language level you deal with a lot of visual, with a lot of body language, with a lot of different clues. I think students get this. So it's the beauty of learning the culture is learning the culture in the target language, because it's you develop the language and the culture together.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Hi, everyone. Greetings from New York. I'm happy to be here with you today and to talk a little bit about the unit that I developed for grade 8. I'm Lori Langer de Ramirez. I am a teacher, as I said, in New York City. I'm teaching 8th grade Spanish this year. And my colleagues, Martina and Mohammed, spoke really so eloquently about connection to our AERO standards, the learning plan, backward design, assessment. I'm going to talk with you a little bit about connections. So really making sure that we are connecting to all the subject areas in our school through the teaching of our thematic units. So my unit is as I said, through grade 8, and it is all centered around this very fascinating little critter called the ajolote in Spanish, or the axolotl. Next slide, there we go. And you can have a look. Here is an image. It's quite a compelling little animal. And so we're going to be talking about environment, about endangered species, but we're really focusing on our grade 8 theme, which is how do human and animal organizations impact communities? Next slide. So our grade level question is, how can we contribute to our communities? And that's really going to guide the way students interact with the content in this particular thematic unit, and also their final assessment, their final performance assessment at the end. Next slide. The unit question is connecting students to humanitarian and animal rights organizations. So we're talking about communities, but in this particular unit, we're going to leverage their access to environmental organizations and really get them to connect to folks who are doing good work in these areas around the world. Next slide. So as an overview, as I said, we're going to explore this animal. We're going to connect to issues of endangered animals, environmental issues. The students are going to make connections with organizations doing work in this field. And in the end, we're going to see they're going to create a campaign. Next slide. So some of the enduring understandings we're going to touch upon. All beings on Earth are interconnected. survival of different species often depends on the actions of others. So a lot of autonomy and efficacy on the part of students and getting them connected to their role in protecting the earth. And being aware of problems and taking appropriate action often works better when it's organized and centralized. So we're going to encourage action that is connected to experts in the field. Some other questions we're going to look at, and again, just like Mohammed's unit, this unit is taught entirely in Spanish. And as Mohammed said, with lots of visual supports, lots of scaffolding, lots of gestures, all the things that you need to do to maintain the target language, but this is done entirely in Spanish. So additional questions will be, how do our actions affect the lives of others? What is the importance of different species in an ecosystem? And what is the role of different organizations and service projects? Next slide. So the students leading up this entire unit, as they do their research and different tasks, they're leading up to a final project that involves creating a campaign to try to elicit support and help and understanding of these animals. The campaign will involve some presentational speaking, presentational writing, and also a lot of interpersonal communication. Throughout the unit, they will be looking at authentic materials and doing a lot of interpretive reading and listening. Next slide. So here's some example of some of the authentic materials the kids will have access to. I love to use infographics with kids. This one in particular tells a lot about the geography. So that's a connection that we're trying to leverage here. There's math in this infographic. So students are looking at data, analyzing data, both visual and numeric. There's also, in a minute, you'll see there's a historical connection for ajolotes and their history throughout Mexico and back to the Mexica, or as we know them, the Aztecs. Students then, as I said, at the end of this unit, created these wonderful campaigns. Here are some of the posters that they designed. These were hung in the science wing in our school. We were lucky enough to have a tank with 5 axolotls that the science teachers were working on. Here are their posters put up all around the walls next to these tanks. And these are meant to get students, it's non-Spanish speaking students or other Spanish students in the school to get them involved. Whenever some of these animals in their tanks had an issue, for instance, this little guy on the right had a fight with another axolotl. He was quarantined, which is particularly relevant to today's kids, but he was quarantined, and so our students were able to go down and leave notes of support in Spanish on the tank. So these notes basically read, "Feel better, I hope you don't fight again," things like that in the target language. Next slide. So some of the connections you've already heard me mention, but I think this is one of the greatest strengths of the units that you'll find in the AERO model units, is that these are not standalone units that just kind of delve into, let's say, speaking and culture, but rather they connect to the curriculum around your school. So they are seen by parents, by administrators, by colleagues as real integral to the work that they're doing in other subject areas. This particular unit obviously has a science and biology component directly connected to the science department. We do have one Spanish speaker in our science department, so students were able to connect with her and speak with her in Spanish about these animals and the work that they're doing. As I said, there is a history component. These animals were used as a form of trade and the commodity back in ancient times, so we learn a little bit about that. There is music written about these animals, and art and literature. There's some very famous pieces of writing that are wonderful that kids can access at different levels. And then of course the social studies and geography component, because where these animals live is vitally important to their story and the environment, the environmental challenges that they face currently. Next slide. So along with the culminating assessment that I mentioned, there are formative assessments throughout. And this unit and all of the units really lend themselves, as I said, with the kind of multiple connections to different standards, to different integrated performance assessments, where students will be interpreting, listening, or reading something, having interpersonal communication with a classmate about what they read or what they saw or what they viewed, and then presenting something out to the class. So lots of different opportunities throughout the unit to assess. And as I said, at every step of the way, making those connections to other subject areas in the school. Next slide. And now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Hanadi, who's going to talk about assessing the 5 C's.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Martina, Mohammed, Christy, Kathy, and I'm so happy I'm joining you today from Beirut, ACS Beirut. And I'm the curriculum coordinator currently. Originally, I'm an Arabic language teacher, and I lead the Arabic program at the same school. And I chose today to focus on assessing the 5 C's, and what I'm gonna do, I will be, next slide, Martina, thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna first address how to use the grade level essential questions and enduring understanding to develop a rich task, a rich assessment task, and how to align this assessment to the standards. And then the focus would be how to assess the 5 C's and not only communication. And I'm saying not only communication because I know how much the word language teachers are really, really good at designing assessment tasks for the communication, probably culture, and they're always challenged when it comes to assessing the connection, the comparison, the communities, even a culture to some extent. So today I'm gonna show how we can transfer the enduring understandings and essential questions into a rich task and address the 5 C's at the same time. Next. The unit I'm going to focus and use as a sample is grade 8 from the model curriculum, and it's unit 3, and it follows the same grade level question that Lori just explained, like showed us a unit, which is how can we contribute to our community. But the focus of this unit, unit 3, is how can we protect the environment, think globally, and act locally. The unit in summary, next please. This unit will invite the students to explore the role of the individual in protecting the environment. It's also, it invites the students to investigate how the local actions and initiatives can contribute to protecting the environment. It is more of an investigation and inquiry. We're asking the students to see what they can do as individuals, how to reach out to the local community and see what are the local environmental initiatives in that community. And then we ask them to understand how, I will help them to understand how the study of the language and culture will elevate these and leverage the local environmental initiatives and help in global collaboration to solve the same environmental issue. The enduring understanding and the big ideas are 3 in this unit. This is what the students will take away from it, and that they will understand that the study of its global importance of collaboration across cultures, and how the understanding and the learning of the language helps in this promotion of the local initiatives to help globally. Next. We have in this unit some additional questions, and I'll particularly focus on the first 2 that are the impact of the local initiatives on the global, and then how the study of the language will help and contribute to facilitate the collaboration among communities. And with that in mind, with the enduring understanding and the essential questions in mind, here's the task that is offered as a culminating rich task assessment task in the unit that you'll find on Atlas. Next. So the task is almost like it's that the Department of Environmental Science at a local university announces a grant of $25,000 to support a student-led green club, 5 student-led green clubs at schools. And the students who are interested need to apply for this grant, and each grant will get $5,000. There are up to 5 clubs. So also the task will tell the students how they can be eligible. This is on the next slide. So to be eligible, they have to choose first the environmental issues that is affecting the local community. And here I mean the target local community, target language local community. And then they will invite a group of friends to start the club. Then they will research first the NGOs that are available, are already serving the same cause in that local community and also in the international world. So, and they will look at what are the similarities, what are not. And then they will write a proposal for their club and contribute to how they will contribute to solving the issue. And then they will advocate getting some approvals from and signatures of 100 people in the target community or less. They don't have to be 100. They will also need to brand for their club on social media and get some support. And they need to present in front of a committee and explain what they're going to do in the club. So you will definitely, as a language teacher, I'm sure and positive that you can find the assessment and the performance tasks to assess the interpersonal, interpretive, and the presentational modes in this task. But what I'm going to focus on is how also you can assess the culture. And you can see a direct link between the standard that we chose for this unit and the assessment. We're particularly going to focus in this unit on the cultural standard 2.2b, which is that the students need to use the target language to teach on teacher-vetted internet sites and multimedia. So definitely that part of the assessment task is that the students have to search local NGOs and see that are working on similar environmental issues, if there are any or not. And also they have to search global NGOs. Next. For the connection part, which Lori spoke about in her presentation, the connection with so many other subject areas. This type of unit can connect quite well with any science and environmental course. It could be also connected to co-curricular after-school activities, to language arts because of the writing of the proposal, the research part of it, civic and civic engagement. It is also about connecting and finding resources in the target language through the search that they do about the local NGOs. Next. The comparisons, again, here, if you look at the standard 4.1b, it speaks about the similarities and differences between some words, proverbs, quotes, any branding document. You know, when they want to search and compare between the local NGOs and the global NGOs, you know that there are branding names and certain phrases used, and they can look at the similarities between the languages and how each language would express the same vocabulary related to the environmental issues in different words. And finally, the communities, definitely the task asks the students to get outside the classroom and go to the local community and get the approval of some people in the community to start their green club. So you can see the alignment, and I'm sure you can create such a rich task that aligns the assessment to the standards that you chose to the unit. However, the language teachers quite often ask, how do we do it? Okay, we know how to align it. It's written, it's beautifully written, but how do we do it in real life? So I'm going to introduce to you a three-dimensional approach to assessing the 4 C's. And here I mean the culture, the communities, the comparison, and the connection. And the first dimension is observation. These kind of standards, you can only assess them if you observe the students while they're performing the task all through the way. And also while they're doing this, this comes the second dimension, which is you give ongoing formative feedback. If you're planning to assess the 4 C's in a very in a mode where it is like more of a test or an assessment of a task, it doesn't work. What you can do is observe them and give ongoing formative feedback that will help them grow and learn more and see how they're attaining the standard as they're going. And the third dimension, the tool that is used, so you're observing, giving formative feedback, and here's a tool, which is the single criteria rubric. And I'm going to show you a sample of how to use the single criteria rubric to assess. Next, Martina. So it's a simple template. You have the task in the middle and the standard in the middle. So you put, for example, I want to observe the students while they're doing this search on the internet about the NGOs, the local NGOs, and the global NGOs about the environment issue. And I have this tool in my hand. So on one side, I will write all the areas that needs improvement that I observe while they're performing. And on the other hand, I will write also when they are meeting the standard and evidence of meeting the standard. I have another example. Martino. Yeah, the other example is the communities. Also, while you're observing, you put, so this is a template that you can use and add the standards in the middle, and then on one side show the areas of improvement, and on the other side the evidence of meeting the standard. And my final slide says, please remember that only a rich, authentic transfer task will give you and provide you with an opportunity to assess the learning of the 5 Cs. And I'm not speaking about assessment of the 5 Cs, but also to assess for the learning of the 5 Cs along the way while you're giving the ongoing formative feedback. Thank you. Back to you, Martina.
Okay, thank you, Hanadi. Thank you, everybody. So I know we are almost running out of time, and due to the technical issues at the beginning, I'll just basically be quick, and I will post all of these links in our next units during the high school presentation, because I just want to remind everybody that all the units with the resources and with the samples and some of the rubrics for the assessments are available on the Atlas Rubicon public site, which basically opened today. Tonight at 1 o'clock, we made it public. So it's for this day. I will paste the link in a second to the Atlas public site. So per grade level, you can click and you will see 4 units per grade level, except in grade 8. So I want to mention this during the middle school presentation, that in grade 8, there is a unit focusing on service learning. And this unit could be done at any grade level and connect to any service projects you have in school. So it's actually guiding you through how to connect language through service learning. Also, more information about the project is also available on the Project AERO public sites. Everything, I will not be able to post it right now in the chat because we have to rush, but I will post it during the next high school presentation. Goal during the middle school presentation was focused on the overarching grade level questions for each grade level, in our case 6, 7, and 8, and on showing one unit and one aspect on the unit through each of our presentations. And we have 1 minute, so we want to say thank you in many languages. Merci, gracias. Okay. And if there are any questions, I will stop sharing right now so I can paste some of those links. If you have any questions that you want us to answer, Chrissy, would you like to join?
Sure. I thank you all for doing the presentation live. We tried to plan for every eventuality, and that's why we recorded it. And today we couldn't use the recording. So I think it made it very dynamic. And thank you all for doing that. I think the question about using the target language is such a good one. And I might just comment on that, that the intent of these units is that you use the target language, that you don't recourse to English, that you're making it, it's comprehensible input. Those of you that have been to the Multilingual Week have heard Stephen Krashen, you've heard other people talking about what is comprehensible input. You do not have to recourse to English. You really can explain things. Mohammed said it, everybody did, show the visuals. One of the reasons why we have so many artifacts in the middle school and high school workshop is to show how you do make it comprehensible without having to recourse to English. So the goal here is everyone using the target language to build proficiency. Those of you that have been with us all day today have heard Elvira and Neus talk about those benchmarks, those cutoffs that go between the novice, intermediate, and high, or between A, B, C, in the Common European Framework. Those presuppose that you're teaching in the target language. So just to share that thought, and thanks to everybody here. We'll answer questions even in the high school presentation and in our final presentation today on shorter sequences that Hanadi will be doing. We'll be able to continue to answer your questions if we didn't get to them in this one. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you soon, half an hour or so.
Thank you.